Introducing our new series of intimate in-person trading conferences in some of the greatest cities in America. It's Market Rebellion Live. Next up, this June in Sonoma County, California. Savor some of the finest wines in America while you level up your trading with Pete Najarian, John Najarian, AJ Monty, Ryan Mastro, and Bill Johnson. Sonoma is limited to just 25 seats to ensure every guest gets personal attention, so act now. Tickets are going fast.
A clapper.
Clapper's back.
By the way, that whole footage that they show before we come on that Jared puts up there, it makes us look like alcoholics, for God's sake. I'm seeing wine, I'm seeing booze, I'm seeing beers, cigars. Holy crap.
Pete, the Gene Hackman, cigars.
Young Frankenstein, for those who don't know.
Welcome back to the Rebel Edge, folks. I'm John Najarian. He's Pete Najarian. That way. Nope, that way. And Jared, of course, is handling all the technical issues about the show. So if you've got a problem with something, let him know.
Yeah, bug him, not us.
Nice.
See, he always appreciates that, folks. And I thought we'd start today, Pete, with, as usual, the 1 minute macro. So start the clock, Jared. We're not going to waste people's time. Inflation in America back. Anybody that thought that number yesterday, where, take a look at this, folks. This is what the inflation looked like. I mean, eggs up 70%, gasoline, natural gas, almost everything up double digits, Pete. And yet we were supposed to believe that was hunky-dory yesterday. That's not a problem. Up 6.5% over last year.
Yeah, guys, everybody brings up eggs, so I'll go straight to that one, John. I know that for a fact, the $2 egg is now a $6 pack of eggs. So it is what it is. Let's try to embrace that for a second. I'll give you this. The 10-year is starting to creep up again. So I think we all should, at least acknowledge that and keep an eye on that. And the dollar is getting back up towards 104. It's at the highest levels that it's been since January 5th. Outside of that, that's a minute. Wrap it up.
All right. Well, so we don't waste your time with more than that, folks. Again, if you really want a lot more than that, I can direct you to some shows that would be more than happy to give you nothing but hush puppies, as it's known,
Filler.
as our father would say. Hush puppies are what you feed people instead of giving them shrimp or crab legs because you hope they fill up on that crap.
Yeah, you want all the good stuff. You want the good stuff, John, and they're filling you up with those. That's filler. All right, Airbnb.
Give you shrimp and crab legs. All right, here's some crab legs to start off with, Pete. And Mark Lepresti did talk about this one. Airbnb, ABNB, up 12% and running. Fourth quarter, beat on revenue and substantially on guidance going forward, Pete. This really was a pretty great report out of them, and kudos to Mark for calling for it.
Well, it was a lot more than a great report even, John. I mean, when you deliver 48 cents in earnings, when you're looking for 8 cents, I mean, holy smokes, you're looking at your Q4 revenue up 24%. Here's the most interesting part of what they actually gave us, though, when they reported these numbers. How about the fact that these guys, they're not going out there and saying, you know what, cheer for us, we just cut 10% of the workforce. They continue to add to it, John. I mean, they continue to grow the workforce and build it up and get bigger and bigger and bigger, which is quite a statement, I think, in terms of what is it that these guys are doing. Well, they're getting more and more properties out there, and they're getting more and more folks signing up for them. And by the earnings, you know exactly how well they're doing. Pretty damn well. So I think Airbnb, it's still well off the highs, the 52-week highs. it still has room. I like this one, John. I like what they're doing, and I like them for 2023.
I do too, Pete. And I think they're going to, the fact that they didn't chase after employees like a lot of the other firms that are any side of tech, to Pete's point, that was a good thing for them. Their headcount's actually down 5% since 2019, and yet revenue's up substantially, almost triple digits. All right, how about Roblox, Pete? This is one that we've struggled with. Not that we haven't had some good trades in it, but my gosh, off to the races today. Strong earnings, making progress with old video gamers, because basically it's a video game platform that you can get on there and, try to exploit your vision for what that video game could and should be. And apparently more and more people are getting on there and doing it. $889 million. That was fantastic versus 871 million that Wall Street expected.
Yep. I mean, I can go through the whole list. I'm not gonna, but I'll just give you a couple of highlights. How about the booking growth being exceeding 20%, John, in December and January? That's impressive. They did lose a little bit of money, though. They lost 48 cents. They were looking to lose about 45 cents. So that was relatively close, almost call it in line. But the daily active users, that's a record number, 65 million. So they're doing a lot of things right. As I said to Jared before we came on, though, looking at these numbers, my one issue, John, and their balance sheet looks fine. They got to make money at some point, right? I mean, they still have never, ever made money. And when I say that, I'm talking about their earnings, 48 cents loss versus 45-cent expected. So they continue to be on that pace. And yet people are kind of turning a blind eye to that. I get it. I get the growth. I like what they're doing. I think they're doing an outstanding job. But that would be my one concern for Roblox, is the fact that someday you've got to prove it that you can make money. And we say that about Uber. We say that about Peloton. We say that about a lot of different companies. And oftentimes you see those companies, when stuff hits the fan, those are the companies that drop the fastest. So just be careful.
Yep, agreed. And nobody really likes to chase a stock that's up as much as this one's up. Now, how about chasing one that's down, though, Pete? Because I'm kind of tempted here, I have to say. Devon Energy down 10% and then fell further than that. They missed on earnings, and they announced CapEx, or spending, to get more oil and gas out of the ground. They said that they're going to spend more than people expected, and that on top of an earnings miss is why shares are down double digits.
You know, John, you're on the right track, and I think I'd be right there with you. I talk about energy a lot. It's probably always been, for the last 2 years at least, my biggest holdings are in the energy space because, hey, look in the Oval Office, look at some of the decisions that are made. That's not a political thing. That's just factual, and you can see where the price of oil is now compared to where it was a couple of years ago. So all that, put all that together, they did miss on the earnings, John, and yet they were up 20% from a year ago. So maybe those estimates were just a little bit too lofty. A lot of different things going into the pricing as far as the production expenses, that was up. So that's a bit of a concern. But you're talking about CapEx. That's a pretty big number above where they had previously thought that this was going to be. So that can be a little bit of a concern. But I look at that earnings and I say, wait a minute now, just because they beat these or missed these expectations, they still had a heck of a quarter versus a year ago. So I think there's a lot of reasons to look at Devon a second time.
And on a dip like what we're getting today, I like it because Pete, I looked it up, almost 5,200 wells. Obviously the higher oil and gas prices go, the better it's going to be for them. The inputs, they've already had to shoulder that responsibility. Now it's going to be, what do they get for what they pull out of the ground? And with that many wells, if you get just that much of a bump, you're going to have a big bump in both revenue and in profits. Yep. All right. How about the trade desk, Pete? I think this is a really interesting one because not only was it up huge, double digits, 20 some odd percent, but it's basically a self-service cloud-based platform that lets you manage and create digital advertising. So you can find what shows you want to advertise on and all that kind of stuff. It is wildly successful at what they do. And if you look at them versus other people in the tech space that may have come down by 50, 60%, look where this one is right now and where the 52-week high is. Granted, it's in the 80s, the 52-week high, but I like where this one's going. And it certainly seems like they've got a pretty good recipe for success.
Yeah, and they had a record quarter for revenue, John, just under 500 million bucks. They got great free cash flow. They had a buyback of 700 million. And oh, by the way, as opposed to what we were just talking about a couple of names ago with Roblox, these guys make money. They actually do pretty well. As a matter of fact, they beat the earnings as well, 38 cents versus 35. A year ago was 42, so it is down a little bit. But John, I like what these guys are doing. I think they're in the right space right now where there's a lot of need for what they are servicing people to do. And because of that, I mean, as far as the cloud space is concerned, I think they are sitting in the sweet spot. They are going to be the ones out there that actually lead the charge. And I continue to think they will make even more record numbers going forward. So for that reason, I don't think you'd have to worry too much about chasing this one because the opportunities for going up, I think, exist.
20 million shares so far today. Normal is under 4 million. So it gives you an idea that people are not only getting squeezed, Pete, but a lot of people are trying to get in. So it would seem it's not just the people getting squeezed on the short side. That's a lot of volume, 20 million versus 4. All right. I'm going to go with GameStop today, Pete, as my unusual to start it off. GameStop is GME. We all know it's a meme stock as well because, you know, what did they do? They sell video games and so forth in their shops. And all of a sudden, during the pandemic, they became one of the darlings. AMC and GameStop were really, you know, just monsters. And now, today, it's up about 6% now, Pete. 21 bucks is where I saw the most recent trade, 21 and change. It was earlier in the day that we saw Feb 21 calls. So those are calls that expire this coming Friday, not a week from now, not at the end of the month, this coming Friday, they're going to expire. So you've got basically 3 trading days. You know, today, what's left of today, tomorrow and Friday, then it's over. So deep end of the pool, but nonetheless, they ran these calls from about 18 cents to 70 cents. So it shows you they were buying, chasing it up. Still a relatively cheap shot versus owning the stock. So I have calls in GameStop GME.
Like it, John. I like it a lot. Obviously, you and I talk about short squeezes a lot. And, you know, because that has been what people have been doing for quite a long time now. And this is one of the leaders in that. So it makes a lot of sense what you're talking about. I've got Google for you, John. Now, what I find out interesting about this is last Thursday, we had buyers of Google in a big way. They bought 22,000 July 120 calls, and that was last Thursday. Well, yesterday, stock down a little bit from where it was last Thursday. They buy the March 105 calls, 10,000 of those. Today, they come back again, stock now back up around 95 at the time. They bought 6,000, actually 6,300 of the March 3rd expiring 100 calls, going for about $1. So they hit as a buy signal, and again, they're hitting again as a signal. So I really like this one, John, for this reason. And this is why I got to tell you, I didn't actually go with the options. I actually went with the stock. I started looking at Google and thought, you know what? They kind of went down their own leg when they got the CEO out there talking about AI and everything else. I mean, that was just an absolute abomination. That was terrible. So that hurt. They had to get rid of a lot of workers, and they were, you know, given a cheer because of that. And then that didn't last very long. They got to compete with TikTok against YouTube, so they've got to figure that out. But John, when you look at the cash flow and you look at where they are from the standpoint of where's their cash versus their debt, what does their free cash flow look like, all the rest of it, it just became something that basically I just said, you know what? I'm just going to start using the options against this, own the stock, and sell options against it. So today I decided to make the decision rather than going with the calls. I actually bought the stock today in Google. So we'll see how that goes. And if it makes a very dramatic move to the upside, there'll be something I have to figure out on that. But that is something that I think will play out over time, because I think there is more upside than downside right now for Google.
Yeah. It's the fact that people just keep loading up, Pete. And like you said, loading up at different strikes. They bought the 100s most recently, the 105s the day before, the 120s last week. I mean, that's a lot of call buying. And I will point out also that those people who actually follow our trades and comment on them on Twitter, some of those guys, Pete, were in those Google puts. That was 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had Google puts, and those paid off as well. So the people that are playing in Google are definitely people that you want to follow, at least in my opinion. But, it's your money, folks. You got to decide if it's fair for you. All right. What about some sports, Pete? We got to be about done with football because we don't have the Pro Bowl anymore. Football's pretty much done until the USFL comes on.
Yeah, and if Roger Goodell doesn't fix that Pro Bowl, he's going to be looking for a job one of these days himself. But March Madness, John, it's almost here. So let's hit a little bit of basketball, college basketball. Here's the top 5 right now, and this is why it's interesting. So we've got Alabama as number 1, Houston, Purdue, UCLA, and Kansas. So I'll start with Kansas. Kansas is amazingly consistent and always there, right? I mean, they are always somewhere in the mix when it comes to basketball, and they are somewhere in the probably going to be a number 1 seed and all the rest of it. That's just who Kansas has become over the years. They were long ago as well when Wilt Chamberlain was there. Now I'll go to UCLA. They kind of fell off. The Pac-12 for a long time just wasn't competitive. Now look at where they are. UCLA is right in there at number 4. Number 3, you and I talked about Purdue. We talked about this player, Zach Edey. He's only 7'4" and 310 pounds, John. And the guy is an absolute unstoppable figure in college basketball right now. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch that guy and see him a lot more, hopefully, over the next couple of weeks as we get towards the tournament, into the tournament, and all the rest of it. You've got Alabama. Hey, wait a minute now. That used to be a football school, right? I mean, what are they doing here in basketball as the number 1? And they've been there most of the year. That's pretty cool, I think, as well. But, John, the team that I love seeing there is Houston, because you and I are both old enough to remember Phi Slamma Jamma. I mean, was there ever a time in basketball, and for the people who don't know what I'm talking about, they're a little bit younger, I will tell you this. All you got to do is go on to ESPN. You'll be able to find it. They've obviously got that somewhere in these all these great stories that they put out there. Phi Slamma Jamma. Unbelievable. But, John, the team this year is also pretty – they kind of remind me of the Philadelphia Eagles. And here's why. They got the number 1 defense in all of college basketball. People only score on average about 50 points, which is amazingly low. But that's how good their defense is. And on the other side of it, they have one of the best point differentials in all of basketball as well. That's the difference between how many points they score per game versus how many they give up. So I think it's just kind of exciting to see Houston back on there. They've been there a little bit. They hired this great coach, came from Indiana. He's doing an amazing job. What do you think? What is some of your favorite memories of Phi Slamma Jamma? Is it Clyde Drexler? Is it Akeem Olajuwon? Or what is it? Because they took on the big boys and took them down, John.
Yep. Akeem the Dream,
Yep.
Clyde the Glide. I remember both those guys, Pete, and they were fantastic. I'm looking forward, and they both wear red too, by the way, the Cougars and the Crimson Tide. So I can't wait, Pete, to see more of that. But I'll tell you, I'm not going to just dismiss the Arizona Wildcats. I'm not going to just dismiss the Baylor Bears or the Texas Longhorns. I think those are teams that if you are in a Calcutta, one of those deals where you buy a team and you hope that they keep making it through the brackets and so forth. I think those are teams you could pick up cheaper that could upset somebody up on top, depending where they decide, because we all know it's not really regional the way they put these teams. I'm really curious as to see which ones of these end up being the teams to beat. But like I say, I like the Baylor Bears. I like the Texas Longhorns and the Arizona Wildcats. What else you got in sports, Pete?
Well, they finally filled all the seats, John. The head coaches in the NFL, it's all done. They finally did it. And how did they do it? Well, they went out to Arizona, and you got Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. And we talked about this when the Eagles were going to the Super Bowl. They had been playing at home. That's where they were able to dominate everybody. They dominated in the first half. The defensive coordinator in the second half, who now is going to be the head coach of Arizona, it's kind of interesting, John. He did everything that it's not just players being young. I would put coaches in the same category of being young, not understanding how big things really are, and making some poor decisions along the way. And I think that's what hurt them in the second half. They didn't bring anybody extra to come rush the quarterback. They made every mistake you possibly could make. How many sacks did Philadelphia have? Well, it's hard to remember because it was 0. This is a team that had 70 coming in, John. And meanwhile, they're on a different surface. Granted, it was slippery, but they're on a different surface. They're in a different stadium, and they played a whole lot of different defense in that second half and never got to the quarterback. So there's a lot to be said for that and how they decided to lay back, and they only had 4 rushers most of the time. They didn't bring the extra linebacker or somebody else in on a pass rush to put a little pressure on the quarterback. Maybe Mahomes wouldn't have been as good in the second half as he was, or maybe it would have kept him from being able to find Travis Kelce. I don't know, but they certainly kind of just laid back, John. And so I think that was interesting. They went for that defensive coordinator anywhere. They should, but we don't know how good he is, right? Because let's see, they had one of the best defensive lines in football, great group of linebackers, and 2 unbelievable guys in the secondary. Maybe all 4 are great, but at least 2. I mean, Darius Slay is the cornerback that everybody would love to have. So you just kind of wonder, is he that good, or is it the system that he was in? What do you think?
I give the, I thought they should have had a spy on Mahomes, Pete. Yeah. And in fact, I would always have a spy on Mahomes. All of you sports fans know what that means. It's usually a linebacker, sometimes it's a D-back that's just going to mirror wherever he goes and stay near the line of scrimmage so that if he tries to make a run for it, that guy's got to run him down. They didn't do that, or if they did, that guy got caught in the wash, as they say, and was not a factor because Mahomes, pretty much had free reign when he got loose. Which is not unlike what Jalen Hurts did, Pete. Right. He did about the same, and I didn't really see them effectively hold him in with a spy either. But I think the players that those 2 coaches have on offense and defense, because, Shane got the job at Indianapolis. That was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. And the other guy got, was recruited all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I think deservedly so, because that defense, when you have 2 of the best defenses, San Francisco and the Eagles, I think they do both have great players. Mm-hmm. But I think the difference was that the one team had an offense that could keep the other team off the field. But Pete, I had a fact that I sent you today. In all of the Super Bowls, and playoff games, any team that has scored 35 points has never lost. Think about that. 39 straight times a team in the playoffs or Super Bowl that scored 35 points did not lose. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a great defense, and yet maybe we shouldn't be, because they scored 35 and they lost.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a head scratcher for me. It was an exciting game. We both know that the game is now made for offenses, not defenses, and that holding call, even though it probably was, he grabbed at the jersey, and even the player said he grabbed at the jersey there. I don't think that was the difference maker in that play, but that's not the way they judge it. If the guy sees him grab the jersey, he's going to throw the flag. So I think overall, the coaching fills are good. I'm looking forward to seeing if Sean Payton can turn around that horrible Denver team. But like you and I also said, he's going to have an unlimited pocketbook with the Waltons family money from Walmart.
He is, but the only problem is they got that salary cap, John, and they got this
Yep.
little dwarfy quarterback that they're giving $250 million guaranteed to. So, that becomes a bit of a problem and a bit of an anvil around his neck. They gave up 24 points in the second half, and they were leading by 10 going into the halftime. I mean, every number that you could look at, John, it was favorable for Philadelphia, and yet they ended up not being able to close it. Like you were saying, 35 points scored, you should win a game. Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it goes. But it'll be really interesting to see if the Colts can make any kind of a turn with this new offensive coordinator, John. He has coached guys that are usually athletic, and that's kind of, the Jalen Hurts style. Because the one thing that does differentiate Hurts from Mahomes runs on part of a scramble. It's not a designed run, as opposed to Jalen Hurts, who oftentimes has a designed run in the play. And it's kind of they all love to talk about the run pass option and all the rest of that crap. But the reality is there are plays where they call for the quarterback to run the ball. And Jalen Hurts is one of those guys. And all you've got to do is take a look at Jalen Hurts when he's in the weight room doing the hip sled or a squat, and you'll understand why they don't really worry about him. Because the guy has the strongest legs on the entire team. He can outdo anybody else. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, that is something that gives them, I think, a really good advantage at times. And there's a lot of athletic quarterbacks out there. So it'll be interesting to see, because the Colts, they're going to be drafting a quarterback, and who are they going to get, right? I mean, this offensive coordinator, he had three things, John. He says, I want accuracy, a decision maker, and an ability to create. The ability to create is the one that stands out for me. That means he's looking for a guy who can run the ball like Jalen Hurts. So I think if you go back now and you take a look at those players that are going to be available when they take their pick, that's what he's going to take, is somebody who can run the football too.
Yep. And those were two of the best quarterbacks, of course, in all of football anyway, Pete.
Mm-hmm.
There are some guys that are drop back passers, like the Brady style, but those are kind of few and far between these days. More and more, you've got to attack the line of scrimmage, because then that puts more pressure on the defense to do either what we said, have a spy on that guy, which means there's usually an opening. As long as he can, check down and go to the open receiver, he's going to find one, unless he doesn't have time. But if they have the right offensive line, he'll have time. All right. Folks, thank you for joining us. We have one more Rebels Edge to close out the week. That will be tomorrow. I believe Mark Lepresti is going to return, Pete, because you've got to head out to San Diego for the Rebels Edge San Diego event, the 2-day event with live trading and everything. So have a safe trip. We'll see you, I'm sure, back here Tuesday, because remember, folks, Monday is President's Day. So there's no trading Monday. So there'll be no show Monday. Pete will be back Tuesday. I'll be back tomorrow with Mark Lepresti, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Bang.